if you find yourself in a negative state where I don't want to do this and I don't, just negative thoughts, negative actions, taking a step back to say, okay, my brain's feeling overwhelmed right now. We can't always make stress go away, but sometimes doing a to-do list or making sure that we're rested or fueled or taking a few minutes to just exercise and move the body are some simple strategies that can help mitigate that in the moment.
Dr. Rebecca Jackson,
a brain health expert,
discusses how lifestyle factors
affect brain function.
What are some other things that really slow down brain function?
Foods and would be, to me, the two biggest things that are just really, really hard on us. If the environment can't break the food down, neither can our body. If you've got a food that can sit on the shelf for months or years without going bad, that means your body's also going to have a hard time breaking it down. So you're really not getting any good from that. Maybe it's giving you calories, but you're not pulling nutrients from it. And there's a cost to that.
Welcome to It's Your Choice podcast. Today on the show, we have brain health expert, Dr. Rebecca Jackson joining us. Thank you, Rebecca, for your time today.
Great to be here. Thanks, Sally.
So I'm going to start out with one big question, and I know it affects so many of us, is how does stress affect our brain?
It affects our brain so much. And I'm glad that you started with that question, because who doesn't experience stress in their lives? When I think about things like our attention, our emotional regulation, our ability to block out distractions and focus, I think of those as really our most precious resources, if I can talk here today. Those are the things that developmentally are some of the latest things to come together in development. And then there's some of the first things that are impacted through aging and decline. So if you think about, attention and memory, but it's not just impacted with development or aging and decline. Our attentional resources, those higher level brain functions, are also impacted by fatigue, stress, chronic pain, anxiety. It's basically anything that's siphoning energy away from higher level brain functions. Our brain is amazing in its structure and function, and that it's always going to preserve and protect the basic functions that keep us alive. And so making sure that our heart is beating, that we're breathing, those survival instincts are always going to be functioning. But then what resources get pulled away from are those higher level functions. So what that means is, if you think about why it is that some days you're more able to focus longer, or some days you can handle the stress and frustrations of life, and other days you get frustrated and snap at your kids or spouse, it's because of differences in those resources in the brain. And so I think about, if you pictured an analogy, if we were going for a bike ride and it was a flat road and you could just pedal and pedal and pedal, you could go all day long. But what stress does is it adds an incline. So it's just going to make those everyday tasks and abilities a little bit more difficult. So it doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to regulate your mood and emotions. It doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to pay attention and do what needs to be done, but you might not be able to stay focused for as long or regulate your mood and emotions as effectively or as consistently. And, stress is a funny thing in life, where sometimes a little bit of stress actually helps to increase our focus. Sometimes we procrastinate because then we get into like a oh no moment of, if I don't get this done. And so that procrastination, so that little bit of stress can heighten our focus, but it's such a teeter-totter where, you procrastinate too long and now all of a sudden you're like, there's no way I can get this done. And now you're so stressed that you can't focus at all. So I think just being aware of how stress impacts us and being aware of sort of taking your own stress pulse on a daily basis. And one of the things that I say all the time that probably drives my kids nuts, but I always say a tired brain is a negative brain. And so if you find yourself in a negative state where I don't want to do this and I don't, just negative thoughts, negative actions, taking a step back to say, okay, my brain's feeling overwhelmed right now. It doesn't have the resources it needs. What can I do to impact this moment? We can't always make stress go away, but sometimes doing a to-do list or making sure that we're rested or fueled or taking a few minutes to just exercise and move the body are some simple strategies that can help mitigate that in the moment.
And there's a few things that I definitely want to talk about within that, but let's go for one that I think is super important is exercise and the brain, because we know exercise is important, and I'm going to use the word for everybody listening, like exercise for each person is different, because if you're somebody who exercises regularly, you might have to work a little bit harder to get that heart rate up. Lifting weights, because muscle development we know is important for the body as well. And for people that are just starting out, you maybe it is just starting out with a walk around the block or a brisk walk, then to work up, because we all know it's not good to all of a sudden start training for a marathon tomorrow if you've never ran a mile in your life. Like, that's not going to be good. You have to start slow and move up. So, and also too, like, the body gets sore, and I've seen it happen where people, they start going to the gym and they do so much that then the body hurts, and then they don't want to do anymore, because I get it. Like, I know what it's like to have a sore body from working out too much. I'm at the point now, I'm a little bit weird that I like the soreness, because the soreness means I've worked out, but I've been working out on and off for decades. And so, what is the importance of exercise wherever people are at on the brain and the body?
Yeah, well, I was giggling as you were describing that because I was thinking about the pickleball phenomena, and I love how much pickleball has taken off. I think it's so much fun. I love playing, but all of a sudden there's all these people, there's an increase in injuries from all these people that hadn't been active that are falling in love with pickleball, and there's all these sprained ankles and falls and concussions. So that's a just side note topic that made me laugh. But exercise is so important to the brain. It's absolutely critical. And, we talk about exercise like it's one thing, but we really need to think about it in multiple different buckets and multiple different categories, because different types of exercise have different benefits for the brain. And so I always like to think about, I can't fit in everything that my brain needs in any one given day, but over the course of a week or over the course of a month, can I be checking those boxes? So when it comes to the brain, spiking your heart rate, this is one of my back pocket tricks and tools that I think is just so powerful, is if we understand that engaging our core muscles increases the alertness and engagement of our brain. And to help understand that, picture when you go to sleep at night, your sensory experience doesn't change. There's still the dog barking outside, the weight of the blankets, the dark room, all of that is still there. But when you are not engaging your core muscles, that signals to your brain to stop processing that sensory information so your brain can sleep. So then the very first thing we do when the alarm goes off in the morning is we stretch. When you stretch, you're firing a muscle that signals to your brain to start being more awake, start being more alert, and start taking in information. So one of my tricks throughout the day, and again, the things I annoy my kids with, is if you're needing to pay attention, if you're needing to focus, if you're stuck mentally, the single best thing that you can do is move your body or to engage your muscles. So it's why teachers say sit up to pay attention, is that there's actual neuroscience to that. You engage the muscles and it signals to the brain to be alert. So a quick strategy, if you have just a couple minutes and you are getting ready for a big presentation or a big test, or you really want to start your day on the right note, taking 3 to 5 minutes to spike your heart rate is super powerful. It's just this massive signal to your brain to say, get ready, be awake, be alert. That can increase attention. It can increase memory just by taking those few minutes. So that instant spiking the heart rate. And then when you do heart rate variability of spike it and rest and spike it and rest, you're exercising the calming mechanisms of your brain. So it's like doing push-ups to help us stay calm in the moment when we're maybe borderline on whether we can stay calm or not. So there's the spike your heart rate side of exercise. And then there's sustained exercise. So where I'm just going to elevate my heart rate slightly and then go for a 20, 30, 40-minute walk. And so whether it's a walk, a run, a bike ride, swimming, whatever your thing is, finding something that you can do on a very regular basis. You don't need to be out of breath for this. You don't need to be, sweating, but just moving your body is so good. When you look at images of the brain, fMRIs that show a brain in action, if you see a sedentary brain and a brain after a walk, it's like fireworks went off. Movement is so powerful for waking up and exercising the brain. Exercise makes our brain happy. It makes our brain feel good. So even if it doesn't feel good in the moment, there are the benefits afterwards.
Pardon the interruption. If you're liking the show so far, please like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. It really means a lot to me. It helps grow the show and the channel and to the show.
And then we have to talk about muscles. There's resistance training and engaging the muscles. And this has been a piece, just honesty. I love going for a run. I love doing a spin class. I love doing a Pilates class. I do not enjoy lifting weights. And so I did it more when I was younger. I haven't done it for a very long time. And I'm like, I know the importance of it. I have got to just do it enough so I get back in that rhythm and routine. But what's fascinating is to understand our muscles really work like a storage space for our body. And when we contract a muscle, it releases hormones and things into the body that are neuroprotective and help with inflammation. And our muscles also help to absorb toxins. So our muscles help with our metabolism. It helps to keep our body clean and healthy. It helps to protect our brain and bring down systemic inflammation. And then you add aging elements to it for females and males. There's so many different reasons, but from the perspective of the brain, really trying to, on a weekly basis, do a combination of what are you doing to engage your muscles, so some resistance training. What are you doing to spike your heart rate, to give that dose of like wake up and alert for your brain? And then what are you doing for sustained movement? So again, you don't have to do all of those every day, but each one of those has a different neuro element to help the brain. And the research behind anxiety and depression with exercise it's just so clear cut. But it's also so clear when it comes to using movement to enhance and accelerate development, using movement to help to maintain our cognitive abilities. So that way the quality of our life matches the longevity of our life. And then really when we get into aging, it becomes just all the more important to help us maintain the cognitive abilities that we want.
Yeah, it's something I've been into exercise. I always say on and off because I go through phases where I don't for a while because things in life happen and stuff. But pretty much my whole adult life. And one thing I can say 100% without a doubt is I never get upset with myself for going to exercise. I always feel great after, but I do get upset with myself when I don't do it. And then I think, then I get a bit hard. Why didn't I do it? There's no excuse, whatever. And as I said earlier, like those exercise for me, I switch it up. I love Pilates. I love doing weightlifting. It used to be more where I'd go to the gym and weightlift, but now I like more of the classes. So it's the full body workout class because then I'm not doing it by myself. But even if I do go to the gym and I kind of feel like, well, I'm just going through the motions, I'm lifting weights, I'm still doing something. And I think that's where people realize like it's still something, whether it's going for a walk and finding sports. Like I'm not a basketball player. I'm terrible at basketball. I tried when I was younger, not my thing. But if that's your thing, basketball or the pickleball or whatever it is, yoga, like all of those things are still movement. And it is really important for us, not only, as we said, physically, cardiovascularly, mentally, like really important. And the science is really backing up how important it is to have that movement. So we know the exercise is really important. And the next thing that goes with that is food for our brain. Is there, I'm gonna say, can you narrow it down to like maybe the 5 best foods for your brain if it's possible? Because I know there's so many.
Yeah, it's tricky to think about it that way, but yes, I mean,
or groups of food.
Yeah, well, let's start by what's our overarching goal, right? If we're eating and nutrition information can be so overwhelming because there's so much information out there and the information can be conflicting based on what your goal is. And so if you're eating to lose weight, there might be different priorities than if you're eating for brain health. So my perspective is I like to look at everything through the lens of what does my brain need to feel and function at its best? And what do I want to ensure that my kids are getting on a somewhat regular basis? They're 15 and 17. So
Oh, that's hard then.
unique set of challenges. They can drive and go get what they want. But what are we ensuring again? And like exercise, we don't have to get everything in on every single day. But
Right.
I guess I like to lead with a couple principles. And first is snacks and treats are okay. We've got to get away from this like black and white thinking of food is good and bad because it's not long-term sustainable. There's birthday parties and holidays and events and food can be so fun and so enjoyable. And so having a good, healthy relationship with it. So I try to lead with first, let's consume what our brain needs. And then if you're still hungry, it's okay to have treats and snacks in addition to that. But let's lead first with what's needed. And so if we think about things first from the development and performance perspective, our body is able to create some of the nutrients needed. The rest we get from the foods we eat. And so you cannot build a house without the proper tools. It's the same thing for the brain and body. And we all get in habits and routines, right? I enjoy nutrition. And so how we eat and what we eat is important. But I'll be honest, we eat the same 5 things every single week, right? Like it's Taco Tuesday and you know, what we pop in the grill on Sunday night. And, you know, when we go to the grocery store to have those lunches that I can make quick throughout the day. So even though we eat healthy, it still tends to be, I'm going to say pretty restricted because it tends to be those same foods over and over. And so unless you're being really intentional about variety, it's hard to make sure that you're getting in all the nutrients needed so that the brain and body truly has what it needs. So a couple foods that are just, you know, foods that I work in every day are going to be your dark leafy greens. And so whether it's kale or spinach or broccoli, and I'm a big fan of, I do a smoothie every morning for breakfast because you can throw so much in there. And to me, that like relaxes me for the rest of the day because I know that I've already gotten some healthy fats in there. You know, so if there's avocado in there and there's spinach, but then I also put in blueberries. And so along with that, the dark greens, your mixed berries, those are so good for antioxidants. And then making sure that you're getting enough protein. And there's a lot of great protein sources. We need to also make sure that there's healthy fats in our diet. I have found at times that if I'm not intentional about that, that sometimes I don't get enough of that in my diet. And boy, that can have an impact on our ability to focus on our mood and energy. And I always think when it comes to the kids, if we're sending them out the door for school for the day, what did we make sure was on hand for breakfast? What do we make sure that they're having for lunch? Because we want to be able to sustain our mood and energy and focus throughout the day. And so if we're consuming foods that are highly processed or have a lot of added sugars, it's going to spike energy and crash, leaving us craving more. And so our attention is going to have a hard time stabilizing. Our mood and energy is going to have a hard time stabilizing. And so if we're making sure that we're providing our brain and body with protein, good healthy fats, carbohydrates are a good thing. They've gotten a bad rap the last few years. You know, again, it's things in moderation, right? And those so those would be kind of some of my primary principles that I think are really important. And then we can't talk enough about the importance of the gut-brain connection. And so our gut is where our hormones are produced. It's where neurotransmitters are produced. And so we can't expect our brain to do what it's supposed to do if our gut isn't healthy. And there's such high levels in adults today and even into kids of leaky gut and autoimmune issues. And when that's the case, that means our gut comp has been compromised. So that's a signal that things are off there. And so making sure we're doing a probiotic or some prebiotics in our diet, just to ensure that we've got the healthy bacteria that's helping us to produce what needs to be produced, absorb what needs to be absorbed in the way of nutrients, and then also in the way of helping us clear toxins. And so I'm a food first person. I don't love taking supplements. I want to try to get my nutrients as much as I can through food. But I also know that I don't always get the wide variety of different foods that I need. And so On a regular basis, we do at my house a vitamin D. Vitamin D is so important for the immune system, for bone health, for brain health. So vitamin D is something I take on a daily basis. A good fish oil that's a combination of DHA and EPA, so we're getting those healthy fats. I think of that like the bike helmet to protect the brain. And then probiotic is something that we always have on hand. Whether we're always good about taking it every day, I think, we go in phases like I'm good about taking it and then we run out and I forget to reorder. So I've gotten better with having things on auto ship these days.
Pardon the interruption. If you're enjoying this episode and you're someone who values performance, clarity, and personal growth, then you're going to love my Mind Matters weekly newsletter. Every week, I send out a quick, powerful piece designed to help high achievers like you master your mindset, upgrade your habits, and lead with more clarity and fulfillment. It's not fluff, it's science-backed, actionable, and easy to digest. It as your weekly reset button to realign with the leader you're becoming. So if you want to go deeper than what we've covered here on the show, then head over to www.sallypederson.com, that's me, and subscribe. Your next breakthrough just might be one email away. Now back to the show. And I think, that's all reality, right? Like that's how we are. Like you have to be so vigilant to be on top of everything. And I was even talking to a friend of mine the other day about, all the things that we're, quote, supposed to be taking or should be eating every day. And I looked at her and I said, how is it there's no way that I could possibly eat what I'm supposed to eat to be healthy every day. And like just that in itself, let alone things that I like to eat, like have some chocolate sometimes or to have a piece of cake or something. And not often, but as you said, occasionally there's birthdays, there's things like we were just at a friend's birthday the other day and we just went over for cake and we went over and had cake and hung out for a little while and it was delicious. But to try to eat everything that we're supposed to be eating, I find is almost impossible. So it is good, but it is challenging, as you said, to have a bit of a rotation of things. But as you said, what your family does is you have kind of your 5 food group day things that you eat. And that is the majority of people. And studies have shown people, they go to the grocery store, they buy the same types of things, they buy, they shop the same way, they cook the same meals, they may switch it up a little bit, but there isn't that vast array of variety that we really do need. And so we need to find ways of including that somehow within our diet to get all the things that that the body needs. And it's hard.
And I'll tell you, and then you add being female of a certain age and everything that you knew about yourself goes out the window. And now you're starting from scratch, trying to determine, okay, now what do I need to feel and function? So what the brain and body needs at different ages and stages in life also varies and changes. I watched this in my 15-year-old son. He walked by the other day and I said, hey, we've got to measure you again. He's like, Mom, we just did. And sure enough, in a month, he had grown another 1/2 inch. And he's, we had 5 hockey games last weekend. So what his brain and body needs when he's going through a massive growth spurt and so physically active and as a freshman in high school, like he burns through a lot of resources. And so really ensuring what he needs, but that's very different than what I need, who, I do run or walk just about every morning. And then I sit at my computer for hours and hours and hours on end. And so, it's also really taking into account where you're at in life. What does that activity look like? I mean, when we think about hydration, I think, also when it can be overwhelming thinking, okay, I want to eat perfect. I want to do exactly what my brain needs. And then it's not always really fun to do that. But I love starting with what can we add? It's easier to add things than it is to take things away. And so I always loved, let's start with hydration. And when you understand a dip in your hydration levels in as little as 2%, can impact your cognitive functions. Like that's just one of the easiest things that we have at our fingertips. And then you just want to build it so it becomes habit. And so making sure, I always have the giant water bottle with me that's time stamped. So that just keeps me on track for the day. And then when I'm out traveling, I'm not as good about because I just don't have it right there in front of me. But what can you add to your daily life? So if you're not willing to give up your ice cream before bed, maybe that's not the end of the world, but maybe you still have the ice cream, but can you add, spinach to your smoothie in the morning, or what can you add that you're not currently getting that's going to benefit the brain and body?
Mm. And I know for me, water is one that I need to work on. It's my whole life has been a constant struggle with water. And I do have a water bottle with time stamped on it, which definitely helps. And it's easier for me to drink more water in the summertime. In the wintertime, not so much. It's cold, it's dark, and water is meh to me, but I'll add sometimes like some lemon to it, or I start my morning a couple of different ways. One is with just like some apple cider vinegar or lemon juice in a glass of water. Or what I like to do is also, it sounds a bit much, but it's fresh lemon with chia seeds that sits for a few hours. Then I add to it a little bit of apple cider vinegar, sea salt or Celtic salt, turmeric, black pepper, and raw honey with some hot water. And I know I've told some of my friends about it, they're like, what? But it's so good. Like I love drinking it.
In the nutrients, and that you created a great morning healthy routine, and you've gotten to the point where you love it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's a way. And then it's like empty stomach, great way to start.
Yeah.
And that works for me. And I say to people, I'm like, play with it. Like if you like those things, like add more of something, less of something. Those are all great things. It works for me. Uh, and so that's how I've kind of at least started. But the amount of water throughout the day is definitely where I'll go through phases where I'm doing good, but it's where I always need to improve,
I feel like
definitely.
it took me years to get there, and now that I am, it amazes me how little water I used to drink and never get thirsty. And now, I mean, you could say I'm almost done with my water bottle for the day, and I am so thirsty today. But what I can tell you is I didn't finish my water bottle yesterday. And so I know that my hydration is off a little bit. So it took me a long time to get there. And now that I'm there, I don't crave other things to drink. I don't, and I used to do a bubble, switch it up with different things, and I don't anymore. I do drink a lot of hot tea as well. Well, and I also drink coffee in the morning. So it's not that I don't drink other things, but it's gotten to the point where I really, but again, it took years of consistent repetition in order to get there.
Mm. Yeah, and some other things that I've been doing now, because I'm of a certain age and my body needs certain things, is trying to do. So a friend of mine and I recently we made these. They're not protein balls because they're made with a bunch of nuts and seeds, and that's like they're like you would assume a protein ball, but it's all like nuts and seeds with some fruit and frozen, and we made them into these balls, and they're supposed to be great because they have a lot of things that we need. And I said to a friend, if we had like one of these balls a day with all the seeds, we're getting probably about 3 tablespoons of seeds into our system in this one ball with either blueberries or raspberries, and so they're good. And I said, I would never just eat 3 tablespoons of seeds or 2 tablespoons of a variety of seeds. Like that just wouldn't happen. Maybe the odd time a little bit. So doing things like that, and they, keep them in the freezer. And of course, I don't eat one every day because sometimes I just forget about them. But when I do, it's like, oh, I'm getting some of those more seeds and nuts and things that I need that I wouldn't regularly eat. So it's finding those things, as you said, to add in for our diet.
And then it's having the motivation and organization to do it so it's on hand. And I go through phases with that as well, where I'm so busy during the week between, the kids' activities and work, that if things aren't available to just grab and eat, then I go too long without eating, and then I'm super hungry. And so it's taking time on the weekend, and I always feel so good when I do that. But I don't always get it done. But yeah, having the motivation, organization, and a plan of like, again, I love keeping things visually in front of you. And so if you're trying to increase the variety of your exercise or increase the variety of your nutrients, if you've got a month planner sitting out on your refrigerator. Like, it feels so good to check something off when you do that. Just say, okay, look,
Mhm.
this week I've gotten those nutrients in, I've gotten that type of exercise in. Okay, here's what I see that I'm missing. That's going to guide me for what I need to do over the next couple of days.
Absolutely. It's great. And kind of as you said, like if it's out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine, she's got three. Well, they're not one teenager now; the other two are young adults. But she always on her island countertop there would always be cut up fruit, and a bowl of different nuts or whatever, like 24/7 all the time. And she said because she knows, like if the kids come into the kitchen or her herself, and you see a piece of pineapple or you see some blueberries or you see some nuts, you always take a few and eat them. And she says then that way they're just getting in as opposed to going to the cupboard and getting crackers or chips or a piece of cheese, which cheese isn't bad, but it's just a way of just different things that we normally like. We don't really go to the cupboard and be like, "Ooh, I'm going to have some almonds," unless
Yeah.
we're wanting almonds.
Yep.
So it's definitely great ways. And so what are I mean, we all know that like sugar's not great for the brain. And that's something we need to avoid. And this is added sugar because obviously within fruits and vegetables, that natural sugar is something that we need. What are some other things that really slow down brain function?
Ultra processed foods and sugar would be, to me, the two biggest things that are just really, really hard on us. Ultra processed foods just create so much wear and tear in our body. We've pulled out so many of the nutrients and we've modified the food so dramatically so that our body isn't able to break it down. And I had a really interesting conversation with the naturopath the other day, and he was talking about how ultra processed foods can sit on a shelf for a very long time and not ever go bad. And so the ingredients from the foods have been stripped out. So that way, the natural bacteria in our environment isn't breaking them down. If the environment can't break the food down, neither can our body. And so if you've got a food that can sit on the shelf for months or years without going bad, that means your body's also going to have a hard time breaking it down. So you're really not getting any good from that. Maybe it's giving you calories, but you're not pulling nutrients from it. And there's a cost to that. There's a wear and tear. And the part of that cost is driving up systemic inflammation. And so if your body isn't able to break down and utilize that foods, it's going to drive up that systemic inflammation. And systemic inflammation, every cell in our body can retain water. And so then all of a sudden, I think of it like this brain fog or mud of like we're trying to sludge through mud to try to accomplish things. And so by working to reduce the number of added sugars, and that's one that, it takes intentionality, it takes being aware because so many of the things, if something's sitting out and we walk by and just grab a handful of M&Ms. And again, I don't want to make foods necessarily good and bad, but the problem is if we're doing a coffee drink in the morning that's got a lot of, a caramel syrup in it and a lot of add-ons. And then when we're having a salad at lunch and the salad dressing has a lot of added sugars, and then we're grabbing a yogurt for a mid-afternoon snack because it's high in protein. Each one of those things can also be really high in added sugars. And so just taking a little bit of time to do some comparison shopping. If you're grabbing a yogurt in the grocery store, take a few minutes to just glance at the difference between the sugar. So you can still have the food that you like and enjoy, but oftentimes there can be a version that's going to be less wear and tear. And so we know sugar absolutely drives up systemic inflammation. It accelerates aging in our cells. Sugar is really, really hard on the body. It hurts attention and focus. It hurts emotional regulation. And then also when we think about the artificial food dyes and preservatives, some of those artificial sweeteners and artificial preservatives, they can cross the blood-brain barrier. And so then there's going to be more of an immune response, more of an inflammatory response. And so again, it doesn't mean if you happen to have something one day that's the end of the world, but in your daily routines, those foods that you're eating every day and buying every week at the grocery store, it's those daily routines where I think we have the most opportunity to make some small changes that can really make a big long-term health benefit and impact for us.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think like the biggest thing is really awareness. I I believe that a lot of people just don't realize how much sugar is in the things that we're eating. And if you actually took whatever it is that you were eating and really looked, because some of these things are misleading too. I know I've read there's some granola bars where you get like 2 bars in one package. And when you read the nutritional value, it's per bar.
Right.
Who opens up a pack of granola bars and takes and eats one and leaves the other one? Nobody does. And so part of it is that awareness that how much it's giving the nutritional value, but how much is considered a serving? Is it the whole package or a quarter of the package or a small portion? And then if you think about if you put on a scale how much sugar is in that, a lot of people would really be surprised. And I do that sometimes when I go shopping. I look at some stuff and I'm like, oh, I'd really like there's these kind of they're a digestive cookie or biscuit, if you want to call it, and it's got chocolate on one side. And I get them often when I'm in Europe. And every time before I buy them, I always I look and I read it and I know. And sometimes I read and I'm like, no, that's just too much sugar, too much calories for this pack. I'm like, I just can't do it. And there's other times I read it and I'm like, oh, I know it's a lot, but you know what? I really want them today. And I get but just reading that, I would say a good 90% of the time I put them back because I'm like, I don't really want them that much and I can't justify that. But there are times when I want them and I buy them and I eat them and I enjoy them. But it's that knowing and making a conscious decision of what I'm doing. And then knowing when I do eat those, what other things have I eaten earlier in the day? What's my exercise routine? And it's that combination of things. So I don't deprive myself of the things that I want, but I also find other things that I like. Example, potato chips. Sometimes I crave just plain salted potato chips. And I realized that a lot of the times it's not the potato chips that I'm actually craving, it's salt.
Yeah.
And if I have something that's salty, dill pickles, feta cheese, or something else, it's helping with that salt craving because it's not the actual potato chip. It's just in my mind, oh, they're salty, they're good, I want salt. And so if we start to recognize those things, we can find alternatives for those cravings um, as opposed to the not so best thing for us.
Yeah. Well, I love exactly what you're saying is to be able to enjoy foods and not have guilt with it, but thinking of it in the bigger picture with balance and being aware. I always think, if you've never done a sugar tracker, that's such an easy place to start. Water and tracking sugar would be, because I think so many people would be really surprised if you started adding up throughout your day how many sugars you're really getting, and then looking to see, okay, what are some easy swap outs so that I can stick with my routines, stick with the things that I love, but make some small but sustainable changes.
Absolutely. I agree. Well, Rebecca, if people wanted to get in touch with you, follow you on social media, where are the best places for them to find you?
Sure. If the things that I talked about were informative and helpful to you, I've got a book called Back on Track, a practical guide to help kids of all ages thrive. It's available on Amazon or anywhere you buy books. While the book was written specifically about how to optimize kids in development from birth through the teenage years, it's really talking about the brain. So if you have a brain, the book applies to you. It talks everything from nutrition and our emotional health and mental health, and it covers a lot. You can learn more about Brain Balance. I'm Chief Programs Officer for a company called Brain Balance, where we're an integrative, holistic program to help build and strengthen brain function in kids, teens, and adults. So brainbalance.com, and you can find me on LinkedIn or Instagram at drrebeccajackson.com.
Perfect. And I will make sure that we have links to all of those in the show notes to make it even easier for all the listeners and people watching to connect with you. So once again, thank you very much for your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you.